Welcome to Angelic Encounters. I'm Kaybe Angel, and today we are talking about skill challenges, what they are, and how you can port them to your system of choice that doesn't have a built-in mechanic for them. First, let's talk about what problems skill challenges are trying to resolve. In most TTRPGs, you have mechanical systems for resolving combat. In many TTRPGs, you also have skills for dealing with specific non-combat obstacles. Pick a lock, move silently, climb a wall, swim, tell a convincing lie, etc. But sometimes your player characters may wish to accomplish something that is not combat, but something that feels a little bigger than a single die roll. Often because it represents the combined effort of multiple skills and approaches, or simply because it is something that requires the combined efforts of multiple characters to accomplish. Enter the skill challenge. Narratively, at the table, I will usually treat a skill challenge as a sort of montage scene. If you can imagine the movie version of your campaign, and you see a series of short little clips or scenes of different characters doing different things, working towards the same singular goal, then you can probably work that as a skill challenge. Some example situations where you might use a skill challenge might be the following, and I've done at least most of these in games that I've run. 1. Preparing a town's defenses before a siege. For more thoughts about running a siege, see my recent video on mass combat, link in the description. 2. Negotiating with a lord and his advisors over an extended visit to ally with you against a hopefully common foe. 3. Running a political campaign to elect your NPC ally as mayor. 4. Completing a ritual to banish a spirit. 5. Performing research in an ancient elven archive. 6. Tracking down a specific type of monster in its natural habitat. We need the pelt of a displacer beast for XYZ reasons, so we have to track down a displacer beast, specifically. Traveling through the wilderness. If you aren't doing a hex crawl, but you want to make a certain section of travel more involved, a skill challenge is one way to do that. You can see me do that in, I think it's episode 5, if I remember correctly, of Tales of Principles, over on my Worlds of Heroic Adventures channel. At the time of recording, that's not been released yet, but it has been filmed, and should hopefully be released sometime in the future. When it is, I'll link in the description. And of course, anything else you can think of. The exact way you are going to run your skill challenge is going to be influenced by the system. Not every system has DCs, or target numbers, or treats modifiers the same way, but at least most systems are going to have the concept of successes and failures on a roll, and many systems are going to have some measure of the difficulty of a given task. So at the most basic level, a skill challenge is going to ask the PCs to generate some number of successes before a certain number of failures, or within a certain amount of time measured in some number of attempts. A good rule of thumb is to set the number of successes needed at the number of player characters plus 50%. And I almost always use 3 failures as the threshold, but roughly half as many failures as successes also works. So for a party of 4 PCs, that means 6 successes before 3 failures would be my default setting. You can also limit the number of rounds. The party must get X number of successes within 2 rounds, or something like that. You can make the number of successes larger or smaller to make a challenge harder or easier. Needing 9 successes before 3 failures is much more difficult, while only needing 3 successes can be pretty trivial if the DC or skill penalty isn't particularly high, and each player character just rolls once with their best skill and, you get your successes. When setting the difficulty of the challenge, though, my recommendation is to not consider the level of the party or their expertise or what skills they have. You don't set the DC super high because the ranger has a massive bonus to survival. If the forest is a normal, ordinary forest, set it at the normal difficulty for the system. If the forest is haunted by a vengeful ghost, cursed to eternal twilight, cloaked in magical fog, and the trees move when you aren't looking, like some Lost Woods Legend of Zelda thing, then give it an appropriately high DC. A party, regardless of level, should get lost in the Lost Woods without the right expertise. And a high-level party with the right skills should cakewalk through the Boar Forest next to the level 1 starting village. The next thing you need to consider when setting up a skill challenge for your system is the special abilities and limited resources the PCs of your system might want to spend. When I ran D&D 5e, which I don't anymore, my rules looked something like this. 1. A special ability that doesn't require a roll and does not cost a resource may allow you to make a skill check with an otherwise inappropriate skill. For example, if you can justify how the use of a cantrip, spells which you can use unlimited times, as helpful in a given skill challenge, then you might be allowed to roll the skill associated with your type of magic, for instance. Arcana for a wizard or sorcerer cantrip, or religion for a clerical cantrip, etc. If the ability would augment a skill that would normally be allowed, for example, you want to climb up someplace high to help navigate, and you have a climb speed, you may be able to attempt an athletics check, which any character could have done, against a lower DC, because you have this climb speed. But an ability that can be used without a cost, my rules cannot waive the need for a roll. A roll still needs to be made. 2. A special ability with a limited number of uses per day, such as a leveled spell in D20 games, or other limited class features or feat abilities, can, with GM approval and a good explanation, buy an automatic success, with the caveat that the resource remains spent during any encounters that happen during the skill challenge and any scenes immediately following it. A limited ability that is a stretch to apply might justify using an unusual skill or a skill with a lower DC at the GM's discretion. 3. Usually, I require all player characters to participate in any given skill challenge, and no PC can attempt their second roll until every PC has acted. Think of it like a round of combat. Everyone else has to have a turn before it's your turn again. The only exception to this that I might make is if they are truly unable to participate. If only some of the party knows Elvish, and the challenge is mostly about finding information in an Elvish library, then maybe you don't include the PCs that don't know the language or are completely illiterate. But maybe they can help in other ways if the library is fantastical enough. So you guys gotta consider your situation. Lastly, I usually only allow each PC to use a given skill once per skill challenge. Different PCs can attempt the same skill. If you're doing wilderness survival, again, you're traveling through the forest, Then each PC can roll survival if they wish, but the same character can't use survival twice. Your mileage with this rule may vary depending on your system in question. I found it worked quite well with D&D, and I believe it would work well in Pathfinder as well. These rules together mean that your party can't simply rely on the most skilled player character for any given task, just rolling a bunch and generating successes. The party must work together and figure out how best they can apply their own skills, their own expertise, and support their allies. Also, as an aside, remember, if you are running Pathfinder 2 and your PCs have an appropriate lore skill for the challenge, then they should have a lower DC when using that appropriate lore skill. The cost of failure. As a general TTRPG rule, I believe you should never roll dice unless you know what a success means and what a failure means. And crit success and crit failure, if you're in a system that has those. This means that if you have it set up that the PCs need 6 successes before 3 failures, you have to know what happens if they get 3 failures. The answer to that question depends entirely on the situation, of course. In general, though, I see 2 spaces of possibilities. 1, they can fail outright. The NPC they supported the mayoral election did not win. The Lord sides with their enemies, or remains neutral in the conflict and will not be swayed. Possibly depending on how many successes, if they had before the 3 failures, whether it's neutral or actively against them. The spirit is not banished and instead angry and attempts to attack, etc. Generally, it's a good idea to set the stakes with the players at the start of the challenge, if it's something the players could reasonably anticipate. The other possibility, if the skill challenge is something that they can't really fail permanently, unless they die, they might have to face a high cost to succeed or to continue. An example of the latter from a recent private campaign, my player characters were traveling through the Lost Woods. Yes, it's a Legend of Zelda Pathfinder 2 campaign. And they were trying to find the Fountain of the Queen of Fairies, somewhere in the Lost Woods. I treated the exploration of the Lost Woods as a skill challenge, and any critical failure resulted in an encounter from a random encounter table, in addition to counting as 2 failures on the tracker. I had 6 different encounters prepped that they might have faced, Stalfos, Wolfos, some Moblins, generally about a medium encounter's worth. But if they reached 5 failures, on the 5th one, they would have encountered Stalfos Master, a solo boss monster several levels higher than the party. The party would have had a choice to run away, escape back to the Kokiri village, and start the entire skill challenge over, or abandon their quest, I suppose, or fight Stalfos Master. And if they beat him, their failures would reset, and they'd be able to continue with their accumulated progress, albeit down all of the HP and resources that they would have had to have spent to defeat him. Considering that an extreme boss in Pathfinder 2 can absolutely result in PC deaths or even a TPK if things go badly, I considered this a worthy failure condition. Now, this is just what my notes said. They ended up succeeding at the skill challenge and never encountered Stalfos Master. And I suppose this means they also missed out on looting his magic sword. Sorry, players. But you, the GM, have to know what failure means, because they could have rolled 5 ones in a row. Probably wouldn't, but it doesn't need to be that extreme. And it could happen. I've seen strings of really bad rolls for no reason. Also, take note, in this case, I planned for an encounter at every critical failure. In retrospect, I should have made that every failure, not just critical ones. I will admit I actually cheated the players a little bit and declared at their 3rd failure, which I claimed at the time to be a threshold value, even though I hadn't planned on it, just to give them a single encounter, because I didn't want them to get through the entire challenge without a single encounter before they got to their destination. So consider that when you're writing these things. I'm not a perfect game master, I'm merely an experienced one. I still make mistakes. An encounter is not the only thing you can do with failures, though. You might have a failure indicating some other challenge that they have to overcome before they can progress. Or you might have it more directly tax the resources in some way. If you're playing 5e, every failure might cost the party a hit die for short rest recovery. In an extreme situation, it might hit them with a level of exhaustion if they're trekking across a desert or an elemental plane, or traveling to the city of brass, or something extreme like that. Every failure might add days to travel, thus using up additional food and water supplies, or fuel for their vehicle in a high-tech game. You might have them suffer damage, or lose healing surges, or become fatigued in Pathfinder, depending on your system. Not every skill challenge needs a consequence at every step. Sometimes the cost of being closer to total failure on the challenge is enough, but there must be a cost for failing the entire challenge. So, to summarize, skill challenges are a great way to handle complex situations that you don't want to hand-wave away, but don't want to dedicate an entire subsystem or an entire session to. You can use the number of successes needed and the failures allowed, or the difficulty of the roll to modify how difficult a given skill challenge is. Skill challenges can be longer affairs, with every success and failure generating scenes, situations, encounters, or it can be a quick affair with just a few words of narration between each roll. Not every system or campaign is going to use skill challenges, but many systems that don't include them natively can make use of them, and they are a very useful tool to have in your GM toolbox. In the comments below, tell me about a time that you or your GM used skill challenge, or if you haven't used one before, what you think you might use one for in the future. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out the links in the description below for all the other things that I get up to. We've got a lot of stuff going on this next year, and we are really excited about it. So please, give us a follow on all our channels and on all of our socials. Goodbye for now.